Look at this. I got headphones on. I got a mic going. Baby.
If only people could see you now.
Hey, no video. We've gone through this before.
All
No video.
All right. Welcome to This Commerce Life. This is a podcast aimed at small, medium entrepreneurs focused on commerce. I'm Phil, your host, and Kenny, your co-host, will join us as well. And we're going to talk to you about the world of retail and commerce and how things are changing in the world.
He's definitely not as young as that picture pretends to be. Definitely not that young.
I don't remember.
See, I told you, he's not as young as the picture was. The picture's got long hair, kind of funky. That's not that guy anymore. It's a bullshit picture.
That was not. That was a fairly new picture.
Yeah, what, last week?
No, but maybe a year ago.
That's not too bad then.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
He's got a haircut.
We'll cut you some slack. How are you, man?
Good, buddy. You're looking all professional there. You look like you're hosting a big radio show.
Oh, fuck, I got Chang with me. I got lots of pressure, eh?
Yeah.
Lots of pressure. I got to, sound good, look good. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whether I do any of that is another story. But
you got the stuff going on back there. You got
the band.
You got the whole music band stuff. Are you using a mic or what are you using?
Yeah, you guys are getting a rare glimpse into the man cave right now.
That's pretty cool though, right?
Nice. That's pretty
So what
cool.
do you play back there? All?
No, I play guitar.
Okay.
And a little bit of singing, but not very well. But we get some guys out here to play music every now and then, and it's a ton of fun. And then I got a little golf simulator back there. I play some golf, and generally, hide from my family.
That's what man caves are for.
Yeah.
It's actually not like that. It's more of a family cave.
I was going to say, there's no bloody way that anybody's hogging it to themselves. You're probably lucky tonight they actually gave it to you for a little while. Come on, guys, man. I just need it for just an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and I lied about the rare glimpse because I do most of my Zoom calls from here. So the entire industry's seen this room.
Just not that special. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's all good.
Oh, man.
That's all good.
Oh, man.
That's quite the setup, though. It looks pretty cool. Yeah,
it's fun. It's been great for COVID. I was lucky. I think I got the last golf simulator before they ran out of stock and had a year wait on them. About this time last year I put it in. So
wow.
Where does I don't even know. I'm kind of a golf head, but where do you go to get a golf simulator?
Well, there's 3 or 4 companies that do them. I went with a company called Foresight and the Quad.
Okay.
They call it. Mine is the Hawk. It's the one in the ceiling, so you don't have to move it back and forth because my stepson's a lefty and I'm a righty, so we'd have to keep moving it. So I got the one that sits in the ceiling.
Okay.
But yeah, it's great. You can and you can play like local courses. So they just loaded on my home club, which is Greystone.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it gives me some sort of edge next year when I play. If I play it all winter.
Hey, you know what? It can't hurt.
Can't hurt, yeah.
It can't hurt.
Didn't help this year, but we'll see about next year.
Hey, it's always next year. This year's already gone, so don't worry about this one.
Well, this year had a lot of newbies in the course, so that'll throw you off a little bit. Changes the trend.
Yeah.
Trying to think of what other excuses.
What other excuse you want to use? Was it been hot in Toronto, or like what's going on? Maybe it's
windy.
windy. Was it cold
for a little bit?
Yeah.
Getting old, losing distance,
can't see, can't hear, knees hurt.
I carry a limp when I golf. It's in my pocket.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's the fun of it, right? That's the fun of it. That's good. You look good.
Yeah, good to see you guys. I've been listening to a bunch of your episodes. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Had some really interesting guests on. Not sure how I made the list, but I'm happy to be here. And
because you're always doing cool shit, right? And I saw the last stuff come through, and I thought, you know what? It's time. He's out of his whatever he's not allowed to do at any given time of the day, all that bullshit. So we get a chance to see what he's up to.
Yeah.
And plus, he's been around long enough. Phil and I have always the same. Like, we like to know like, what do you think's going on in the industry? Where do you think it's going? How do you think it's going? Yeah. Just to tap into your head. You're good insight. I think there's a lot of smaller businesses that listen to us, and they probably get a kick out of hearing you. You know shit, right? You've been around long enough. So like us.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So for the guests,
different ways you want to call me old, or you want to stop there?
Kenny,
I just got to pick on you a little bit. I haven't seen you in ages.
Always plays
so.
the H card.
Oh, you got to do it. What the hell?
He'll play it. Yeah. So for guests, we've got Patrick Higgins on, president of Propel natural bands, I think is what you are right now. But I don't know. I think I know you from
My days are Higgins Cohen. The
Higgins
old days.
Cone. I think I may somehow. I think I met you when you were at Atkins, but I don't know how I would have met you, because during that time I would have been Kimberly Clark. I would have been Kimberly Clark and Denon during that time. So anyway, but I'm sure I met you at Higgins Cone for sure. And then
were you guys trying to make a low carb Kleenex in the early 2000s?
Maybe,
like everybody else.
Maybe.
A bite as well, right? High fiber, so it doesn't count. Like you can take out some of the tree issues.
Good Lord.
High fiber, man, it cuts against the carbs.
It might have been a paper towel. Maybe we tried to make a low carb paper towel so you could wipe spills up and then eat them after. I don't know.
I mean, Kenny, you'll remember that days. You know,
we crushed it. Remember?
That was insane. Yeah, we
crushed it. Well, who was on? It was Amsler, right?
Chris was our Western guy,
and we even got you guys down to pharmacy. Remember? And the pharmacy conference was unsure of why the hell we were down there with you guys and thinking like, what is like, now we're bringing chocolate. I remember John C got a ton of shit from saying like, what are you guys doing, man? Now you're bringing all this shit down there. And I kept saying, this is good stuff. This is stuff you need to know. Your customers are going to be asking about these diets and things. I mean, you might as well know it, right?
Yeah, I remember that very well. I didn't go on that trip, but I remember Chris trying to talk into letting him go. And it was like, yeah, that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, it was different anyway, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So you didn't actually work for them, did you? I thought you were still. I thought was brought in with was part of the portfolio with Higgins Cohen.
It was, yeah. Actually, when we started Higgins Cohen, it's a funny story because and I don't even know how we pulled this off, but when I brought John in, Atkins was our anchor client. I mean, they were one of the only reasons he was able to quit his job and join me, and we had enough revenue coming in, and the business took off, as you remember, so quickly that I think we were on month 3 and they said, hey, you guys are fired and we're setting up our own team in Canada. And I said, holy shit, like that
happened fast.
Yeah. And we were kind of freaking out. So the only move we could make really was for me to leave the company temporarily and run Atkins Canada as an employee of theirs.
Okay.
But somehow we managed to talk them into leaving it with Higgins Cohen as the broker, which like made no sense, but they did it. I think they were so, preoccupied with everything else. They weren't really paying attention. So it was great. It actually helped us start our business because I got to leave and take this job and build a team and
still fuel it on the back end on the other side.
And then we had it at the company and John, worked that end of it. And then when, the whole thing was up and down in 2 years. And at the end of the 2 years, we moved, all the good people over to Higgins Cohen and carried on our business. So
right.
And Atkins, believe it or not, is still a client of ours.
Well, they still stuck around after all that time.
After all that time, they left for a couple of years and then just came back to this new company, to Propel.
Isn't that interesting? So I'll tell you what you're going to do first then, because I mean, Phil and I typically do this half-assed as usual. So we get too deep and then nobody knows who you are, or what you are. So if you don't mind, maybe a quick history of why you're in the industry, how you started in the industry, some of the stories you're talking about now will play into them, because I do want to get into the Propel eventually, but just to give people context as why, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I've been in the industry. I'll try and keep it short. Usually when I go down this rabbit hole, it goes on for a long time, but I was lucky enough to fall into this industry in 1993. And really, the reason I did is because I was unemployable at that time and knew I needed to start my own business. I dropped out of high school. I've been working in restaurants. I hadn't been really thinking about anything past the weekend for 5 years. And I was driving downtown with a buddy of mine, Marwan, I'll tell him to listen so he can hear his name, but Marwan Ferris, and his brother opened a health food store. It was more of a pill shop, kind of a GNC type store before GNC was even in Canada. Okay. And we went into that store and I couldn't believe my eyes. I looked around the store and I saw these shelves full of vitamins and protein and supplements. And And I was into fitness back then. And I thought, man, this is exactly what I want to do. And I just made a decision at that moment. This was the industry I was going to be in. I knew nothing about it at all. And by the way, neither did Darren, who opened the store. He really didn't know a whole lot about it either, but he was just a really, really good businessman, saw a trend and just jumped on it. They ended up opening a bunch of stores and and still have great careers in the industry. Darren went on to be a hockey agent. I think he's like the number 3 hockey agent in the NHL, Darren Ferris.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah, so he's really the reason I got into this, and he wouldn't even know that probably. Marwan sure does, because I tell him the story all the time. But so I started the business, and you'll appreciate this, because as a buyer, like, holy smokes, like, I had no idea. I stumbled into I found an Alive magazine, and I just started, calling people in the magazine, literally like ads, right. And one of my first calls was to a company called Traditional Medicinals, so I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And I managed to talk them into letting me be a distributor, and I started buying and selling tea, and I'd buy displays of tea, and I'd literally sell them out of the back of my van, and I'd drive around. This was back in the days where you could drive up to a Shoppers Drug Mart, walk in and sell them something. And you'd have a check in 10 days, and the display, they'd call you in 2 weeks to refill the display. So it was really wild back then. You could do a lot without, even trying. So I had this business going, and it was great. And then, I remember going, this is the funny part. I went into Big V. So you can imagine this is a 100-store drug chain in Southwestern Ontario. And I found my way into their head office, and I'm sitting at the desk of this category manager. I literally have no idea I have nothing. I don't even have a business card. I have nothing. But you know what I had with me? I had a briefcase. And when I opened it up, I pulled out that Alive magazine, and that's all I had. And I literally sat at the desk with her, and I wish I remembered her name. I'd love to contact her. I sat at that desk and flipped pages of the magazine and said, "What do you think of that?" And she'd be like, "Well, that looks good." And I'd dog ear the page and I'd flip a few. "Hey, what do you think of that?" That looks like something we might. Okay, I'd dog ear that. And then I'd literally drive back to my apartment and start calling all these people and tell them I had this big customer. And so,
you're a beauty. So you're full of shit. That's even hilarious. Way back then.
Way back then, yeah.
That's awesome.
Full of shit. Yeah,
I love it, man. That's fantastic. So seriously, you're telling these vendors that I've got this deal. She's all over, man. I got POs lined up.
Yeah, and then I really started to do it. I started to sell some stuff, and then I hired some guys, like some brokers, some sales agents to sell stuff as well. And I had this thing going. Now my goal going into this, I quit a job as a restaurant manager, I think I was making about $40,000 a year, and my goal
at that time,
not bad. And
that's pretty good change.
The goal at the time was to make $35,000 a year. I said, I'll take $5,000 less not to have a boss. Just let me make $35,000 a year. So I was kind of chugging along, and things were going great, but it was complicated. A lot of money coming here and there, and display, a lot of it was really complicated. But in the meantime, we built up this business at Traditional Medicinals to be, quite sizable, to the point where my contact at Traditional Medicinals called me up one day, and he said, "Hey, you've done a great job building the business. Our business is going really well in Canada overall. We want to hire someone for Canada. Do you happen to know anybody that might be interested? I thought I'd let you know, blah, blah, blah." I said to the guy, "Steve, I don't know anybody." I'm literally just floating out here, driving my van around. I haven't even met anybody yet in the industry. And he's like, "Okay, well, just in case." And then I hung up the phone. Then I thought, before I hung up the phone, I said, "Hey, Steve, in case I come across someone, how much does a job like this pay?" And he's like, "Oh, it'd be, about 100,000 US. And back then, that's, the dollar was money. Like $1.40 or something like that.
That's a big coin.
Yeah. So I said, "Okay." And I hung up the phone, and I started hyperventilating. And then about an hour later, I called him back. I said, "Hey, Steve, I think I'd like that job." And he said, "What are you talking about? You've got this big business and you're doing so great." I said, "Well," I said, "a lot of it's kind of bullshit. You're really my business, and I'm tired of slugging around boxes of tea. God knows what else.
Awesome.
Scraping together $30,000 a year. So, if you'd consider me for that job, I'd love to do it." And somehow I got that job, and that's how I started. And then, they had to pay me because I was Canadian. They didn't want to jump through all the tax hoops, so they paid me as a contractor, which opened, the door for me to pick up another client in a couple
Absolutely.
of years.
Wow.
I had some, I had
That's
some
hilarious.
people in my corner. Like that was one guy that was like literally, instrumental. Him and I'd say Paul Marsham, if you know that name, are two people that I owe everything to. Like those guys.
Wait, I don't know that name. Who is that?
Oh, Paul is he's one of the original natural food brokers. Still very
okay.
Marsham International,
still.
great guy, great company, and really was super helpful early on in my career for sure. So but yeah, that was it. So I took that job, and then another line, and then another line, and then it just kind of built from there. So it was pretty cool.
So when did you start? So at that, it's not really horseshoes either. Like if you're busting your nut, getting things done, right? Yeah. I mean, it's because if you think about it from his side, why take a chance if you don't feel like the guy can do it? If the guy's doing a great business and you're getting phone calls and you're doing it from the back of your van, he's probably thinking, okay, shit, if this guy can get organized and really actually not worry about driving all over the city, could actually focus on calling in accounts, it's a good move for him, right? Obviously, you had the personality for it. People were listening to you,
Yeah.
So you gotta.
Listen, I think he took a big chance on me for sure, and I did well, and they continued to grow and build a business, and we kind of outgrew each other eventually as I was picking up more brands and going in different directions, and they took the business back to the US. But great. I'm still I still owe those guys everything. Every time I see any of them, I make sure to say thank you.
They're a good group too. They're good people. So
really good.
It makes it even easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at this point, so you got traditional, and then what happens though? So like, what else did you pick up before? Like, when did you start actually making this a real business? Like, we're saying, okay, I'm going to do this as a broker, rep, agent, whatever you want to call yourself.
Yeah. So, I mean, my second brand was Balance Bar, which was a great brand back in the day.
Fantastic. Before Kraft buggered it up.
And that happened over a golf game, and with Steve from Traditionals, and Pat Lee was the VP of sales at Balance Bar, and I think they had just gone public, and they were really, really, making a run in the U.S. and getting up to 100 million in sales, and they wanted to get serious about Canada. And we, on the golf course, the three of us negotiated this deal where I would, Traditionals would pay me a little less, and they would pay me the same, and I'd have two brands. And all of a sudden now I'm making,
nice money.
75 grand US, and it just kind of kept coming. And then I start peppering in a few smaller brands, and but then trouble hit, because what happened was, you mentioned Kraft. Kraft bought Balance Bar. First thing they did is fire me. They didn't even ask any questions. Well, they offered me a job first,
right?
And I said no, and then they just and then a year later there was no Balance Bar in Canada.
They really screwed that one up, which was too bad.
Well, the same thing happened on a few different brands. So I was called this company a brand management company, and I was managing a handful of brands. But then every time somebody got acquired, acquired by Abbott, I got fired, But the person that always maintained the business was the broker. And it was always the broker I hired. Like, I put these brokers in place, and then I'd get fired, and they'd all live happily ever after. So finally I got smart. And that's when, when Cohen and I got together, it's like, we're just going to be brokers. Like, we just, that's the future. I memean, this brand management thing is great, but literally you lose a client through no fault of your own,
right?
On 25%, like it's hard. It's a tough model.
Well, and at the time you were doing it, because I remember all those purchases too. It was that time, sort of in that early 2000s, where they were being bought a mile a minute. Yeah. Like, I mean, if people think it's bad now, they hear about it, because now the deals are $1 billion, $2 billion, $10 billion. They're stupid numbers. But in that time, there was a lot of 30 to 50, $100 million deals, like, all the time. And it was always great little companies who had, like, Zone. I love Zone.
Yeah, and, Zone was a $160 million deal back in.
It was a great company, great bar.
I think Balance was $300 million.
Something like that.
So there were big deals happening, relatively speaking, for sure.
Yeah.
But you're right. The M&A activity back then was
mental.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure changed the industry for sure anyway. So
yeah. But you know what? That's one of the things I love about this industry is, we can run through those cycles. All of these brands can get bought up, and then all these new ones start, and then they, the top brands, you take okay, so maybe take Amy's and Cliff and a few out of the equation, but the top brands in most categories, the number 2 or 3 players in most categories, weren't even around 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even some of them, so that's pretty cool.
But that's pretty exciting.
But that's reintroducing a whole new problem now, is now the barriers of entry seem to be so low that there's way too many brands starting. And I think there's risk there. And certainly we're investors, as a big part of our business now. We invest in a bunch of different companies and are always looking for deals, but we're getting a little skittish right now on these deals, just because there are so many Canadian brands starting up that the numbers don't add up. Like there's no way they can everybody's got the plan to go to the US, but it doesn't add up, because you couldn't have 5 new adaptogen beverages launching in the US. You can't have another protein pancake launching in the US. Like it doesn't work, So I think the party's going to be over soon, and there's going to be a lot of investors holding the bag on some of these brands. So and it's not to say there's some aren't going to be successful, because they are. There's I think Unbun is going to be wildly successful in the US. I think Midday Squares is going to be wildly successful in the US. I think there's some exceptions, on other categories as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of people disappointed when they get down there, because I've learned firsthand it's not easy.
I think that's the first thing most of us
kind
learn.
of treacherous territory.
It's really scary waters, because it's a beast, and when it swallows, man, it just takes you whole. Like there's shit. By the time you figure out, like you're not in drowning anymore. You've already drowned. You just don't know it. Yeah. Right. It's a tough gig.
It is really tough. Yeah, for sure.
What like that's an interesting. I feel like already we could do this all night. Yeah. But like while we're on that, because I think the US thing, it's funny, right? Because when Americans come to Canada, they have the flip side problem, right? Because they think, you guys are just like us. So what's the big deal? I'll retail just like I do in the US and it'll be fine. And we know, from countless examples that is completely not true, right? That if you don't retail the way Canadians retail, you're going to have a really tough time with it, right? But I think like going the flip side is you go to the US, everyone thinks, hey, you know what? It's like 10 times the market. So whatever I sold here, I'll sell 10 times as much. And then you realize, no, this is actually not one big country at all. It's something like 4 to 5 regions, right? Like, just to start with. And
they're all different. They are. Like, there's a lot of difference between all the regions. Southeast is not the Pacific Northwest. I mean, you're 2 different worlds, never mind countries.
Yeah, and the channels are very different. They're not as blurred as they are here.
No.
Most people in Canada shop at a Costco, shop at a Walmart, shop at a Loblaws or Kobe's. Down there, I mean, it's so fragmented. I mean, it's very, very tough. And the thing, the advantage the US brands have coming here is it's low risk. I mean, it's if things go horribly wrong, it's a blip, it's really nothing for them.
Yeah.
And B, they've got, this track record of success. They have a chance to kind of see the categories up here and know where they fit in. We go down there and a lot of these brands, and there's a lot of them. Like I can't tell you how many I talk to every day that are, we just started selling to these, 5 retailers and we're opening up these guys. And I'm like, oh, geez, like that's, you might want to slow down and think about that. The problem we have down there is for every, adaptogen beverage, for every, protein pancake, and I don't want to pick on protein pancakes, but, the categories, there's 5 players already down there. So you're trying to bust a nutrition bar is a perfectly great example where, Love Good Fats, I've got firsthand knowledge of that one where, fantastic product, number 4 bar in Canada, thing was on fire, went down there. We couldn't break into the top 20. We finally got into the top 20 in natural, but we're a long way away from getting into the top, 20 in conventional. And we're still plugging away. Like we haven't called it quits yet. We'll keep going, but holy smokes, it's a lot tougher than we thought. We've got a Walmart in Canada selling, $300 a week per store of Love Good Fats, and you go to the US and they're selling $15 a store.
Right.
So your 10 times math didn't add up.
Well, because people forget. Yeah, you're right. It's 10 times mass, but in 20 times the outlets.
Yeah.
And how do you get them to these outlets? Because I mean, as you know, in Canada, distributors have a good business in Canada, but Directa has a very good business in Canada too.
Yeah.
Right. Most of us, because of regionality, most of the retailers had distribution centers. So you could bypass distributors or work with them to some degree. The States is really in large scale. It's a distributor model.
Oh, yeah.
Which changes your costing structure like immediately.
Yeah.
And again, people don't think of it. Like they don't. We always tell people, like, even when they're on the show, like, you got to do the mental math first. Like, sit down and take a breath of air. Like, and just write it down and see if it actually works. Talk to someone like you and say, hey, I'd like to do this. What do you think? And listen to it, because it's not that easy.
And listen, we got surprised with Love Good Fast. Like, that was, the costs were way higher than we anticipated. Everything we did was higher. First of all, you expect the volume per door to be higher because you relate it to Canada. Forget it. And then all of a sudden now everything goes up as a result of that. Now all of a sudden all of your logistics and freight and everything that you budgeted, 2.5% is now 7% because you're moving literally boxes here, boxes there instead of pallets.
Right.
So it's a tough market. You got to be well funded and ready to spend some money and just creating awareness down there. Like, that's the other thing here with these blurred channels. Like, you get distribution here. Like, we can launch a product here within 3 months. Half the people in our demographic have heard of that product because for sure they've seen it at Loblaws or London Drugs, or they've seen it at Whole Foods. You can be in Walmart, Target, and Safeway in the US, and 99 out of 100 people have still never heard of your brand.
No clue.
No
clue who you are.
The awareness is massive, and that's a tough nut to crack down there for sure.
So right now, what are you doing, Patrick? Are you doing a lot of stuff here to there, or picking up brands from there and coming up here? So, like, what are you doing right now? I mean, it's hard. It's not fair because I know what you do. I'm trying to get an audience to understand what you do. Like, you came from the old days of you had your own brokerage, Higgins Cohen. You guys were bought by Acosta.
Correct.
You stayed on with Acosta for, I can't remember, it was 3 or 5 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, we actually stayed for 6 years. We had
Okay.
We had a 5-year non-compete, so a 5-year restrictive period.
Okay.
Did we stay on for 6? No, we stayed on for 5. Sorry, we stayed on for 5 years till the restrictive period ended. But then we still had another year as part of our employment agreement. So we had really 6-year restrictive period. And then on the expiry of that, we started Propel Natural Brands. So right now we're a full service brokerage. We're up to almost 40 clients already.
40 clients?
40
clients. Yeah.
Buddy, when did you turn on the lights? Wasn't that long ago?
Officially May 1st.
I was saying this year.
Yeah. We had a few clients before that, but we had to be very careful.
Obviously,
With Acosta in any way. So really May 1st is when the cuffs came off and we started adding these brands. So no, it's been really quick. We've hired 30 people too in a short time and probably have another 15 to go before the end of the year on hiring. So there's a whole, group of challenges that come along with that we didn't even anticipate. First of all, we had no idea whether we were going to have 10 brands by this time or 40. Like, we thought it, but it happened pretty quickly. And then, trying to onboard clients, onboard the team is pretty difficult. And
I think for the most part, just in case you're a little delusional, I think most of us figured you guys were going to come with something and you were going to do pretty well out of the hopper. I wouldn't have bet 40. I would have bet you had 10, 15 solids, which would have been huge, but I wouldn't have bet 40. I would have come with 40. Be serious. I mean, give the guy a couple of years, 40. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I think we surprised a few people and we surprised ourselves for sure. But,
wow, that's impressive.
I think a lot of it had to do with timing. I think people were with COVID even. I think people were just getting a little complacent and suddenly they had an option, so they were ready to start talking. And so everything's gone remarkably well, and we'll continue to. And we're being very deliberate about this brokerage. We're really trying to build something special, and we see it as a real marriage of kind of what Higgins Cohen was, which was a fantastic company, like just amazing culture, great people. And Acosta was great processes, structure, systems. I mean, we learned a lot there.
Oh, so you can learn a lot. It may not have the culture that you had. It's a different culture.
Culture was different for sure.
Button down though.
Yep, absolutely. And we learned stuff there. And when you combine those two things, man, it can be magical. So that's what we're going for now. Yeah. So mostly we represent American brands. That's typically how it goes. We always will have, I don't know, 20% of our brands will be Canadian.
Right.
We're actually looking at starting an accelerator right now as a separate company with some different partners. So there's a few of us that are kind of having side conversations now about that. Yeah, because there's a real need for it. There's all of these companies that really, they're not ready for a brokerage of any kind. They just really need, and not an incubator. We need them to be kind of up and running, have product, have some listings, maybe, a couple of $100,000 in sales.
Right.
And then they can come into this accelerator and we can help them kind of put it all together nicely and get some distribution and really start building the story, building the brand. And then, because I think the new normal is going to be these companies that are launching in Canada have to make a business out of Canada. That, a lot of them are kind of losing money, thinking the prize is south of the border and that's when everything will blow up. And it never happens, right? So what we'd like to start seeing is some brands, some adaptogen drinks, some, pancakes, some, different things that come out that can actually turn a $5 million business in Canada into a $500,000 or $600,000 EBITDA, and
right,
and if you don't take on a ton of investors and you keep your team pretty tight, that's a pretty nice business for somebody.
That's a great business for somebody.
That's a great.
So what are you when companies, let's say companies are coming at you and they're in that $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 sales range, maybe not quite ready for you. What advice what are you telling them? Like, what are you saying to these people to say, when is it time for them to come back to you? And what are you trying to coach them with? Because you probably see potential, but what's the.
Yeah. Great question. So, our big thing has always been this way is we need to know we can add value. If we can't add value to the equation, we're just not interested in the partnership because we're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy. And, I never want to walk around a trade show and worry about people that aren't happy, so, that's kind of my stance on that. And, but I've also got a soft spot for entrepreneurs and I do like to help and I do like to coach and, I do my best. There's only so much time in the day, so I can't give it up to everybody, but we set up some guardrails internally to scare off people more than anything. So we say, look, you've got to have $5,000 minimum commission every month. So right off the bat, if you're 100,000 in sales and think you're going to just walk in and have access to all of our people and Indigo Marsh, and they would do the same thing, something similar.
Sure, they do
as well, because you have to protect your resources. I basically will recommend. There are a bunch of smaller brokers out there that will take them on and help them kind of get their
grow
and then there's also a few brand management companies that kind of do the same. But at the end of the day, I've also told people, you don't have a viable business here. Like this isn't going to work. And I've learned along the way kind of, the telltale signs of that. And, one of them is gross margin. It's amazing how many people will come to you with a 20% gross margin, but, oh, don't worry. As soon as this happens, we get to 35. But what they forget is the time that it takes for this, and this to happen. Other headwinds have come and freight's gone up and raw ingredients have gone up and it's negating all of their gains, and they're, 5 years later, they're still at 20% gross margin, so.
And actually not even there because they're bleeding. Like there's nothing left to bleed. Right. As because what retailers are like,
Absolutely.
The industry's like, it's just.
Oh yeah. So that's my first advice to anyone is price yourself with a decent, if your product if the market can't handle your product at a 40% gross margin, then you shouldn't be launching your product. Period.
Right.
There's no world where that's going to be okay.
Yeah, tough one too.
We laugh at we give that feedback all the time.
Actually,
yeah.
Like I feel bad, but sometimes like I've said to brands, you should keep doing what you're doing, right? Because the 20%, they're like, oh, we do great margin, we go to farmers markets, and you kind of go, okay, you should stay there, right? Like, oh no, we want to go to. Sorry, no, there's no. You should ask somebody else because you won't like my answer, right?
Yeah.
You won't get there, right? Like there's no way to get there with that kind of margin. You won't have any money left. You'll lose money all the way there. So
yeah, I just think it's more brands, more Canadian brands I'm talking about here, more than just looked at Canada as their business and built a business for Canada. And if they should be so lucky down the road, and let's face it, you could probably count on one hand the amount of Canadian brands that have actually gone to the US and been really successful.
You're right. Like wildly successful.
You could probably get out the other hand and maybe your toes to count the ones that have been moderately successful.
Right.
But the list, it drops off fast.
Yeah.
So the chances are it's not going to work. So just build your business for Canada. If you're lucky enough in 3 or 4 or 5 years that you've got a $5 or $10 million business and healthy gross margins, and you've kind of come up with something different, and you're really good at what you do, then maybe start dabbling and do it either by channel or by region. Don't do a full launch. And I think
just be careful with it.
Yeah.
Careful with it. So your product mix
is your plan, like from the get-go, I think is a huge mistake. A really big mistake.
Well, I think sometimes too, I mean, I was going to ask you another question, but I think sometimes too, now maybe you can, because you see more of this probably we do, is I think sometimes that the business, if your business model is you want to do something because you're going to sell it, right? It's not just even the other part of, I'm going to get to the States. Well, I'm going to sell it and I'm going to get 50,000 billion time multiple, right? And that's, and I'm going to sell for $1 kajillion. I think, that's good, man. I'm happy for you. Good luck.
Sure.
So, those ones in the newspaper, that's 1 in 100,000.
Well, yeah, it's 1%, right? Like
it's less even. I mean,
less.
You getting a lot of that?
I agree. I don't think you can build a business with the intent of selling it. I think you build it with the intent of building it and building a brand, and acquisition's a byproduct of your success. And I think that's
and it could be a byproduct, or it doesn't have to be even, right? You might really enjoy the gig.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
that's the key.
Right now, Patrick, in the old days, it was a lot of natural health type products. Still the same, or are you dabbling into other categories? Is it food-based, HABA? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so we're natural products for sure. So we do, probably about 30% of our revenue is in non-food.
Oh, okay.
Anything non-food. So maybe 20% of that would be HABA and supplements, and 10% might be household, and then 70% food and grocery.
Right.
We've never really got involved in pet. We'd like to go down that road eventually. That's kind of on our radar. We're really starting now. So our guardrail is it has to be natural. We wouldn't never get into stuff that's not natural.
Right.
So that's definitely a guardrail for us. But we would like to kind of move around, I think, to different categories. So we're starting to have a lot of success in deli and in-store bakery and produce.
That's kind of fun.
We're going to continue down that road and gaining expertise there. And I think that's the way the industry is going. I think you'll see just more and more products popping up in those categories.
Sort of fresh categories. How are you managing? But coming from the worlds that we come from, we're 6 to 9 months to 12 months to 24, 36 months shelf life. 3 days, 7 days, 10 days.
Yeah. It's a different kind of business for sure. It's certainly higher touch and less margin and everything that goes along with that. But the velocities are exciting.
Yeah, it's tonnage.
It changes dramatically when you take a loaf of gluten-free bread out of a freezer and stick it on a rack in a bakery. Man, things get interesting.
So you guys are doing that. So you are in the refrigerated frozen world now.
Yeah, we're kind of everywhere. I mean, we go where our clients need us to go, but we're now at a point where we're getting out of our comfort zone and taking clients where they didn't think they needed to be or didn't think they could be. And we're starting to figure that out and solve that for them. So I think it's not because we're doing anything, special. I think the retailers have an appetite for that and are getting more interested in taking stuff out of, the natural set and moving it around the store.
Well, I mean, the appetite should be there by now. I mean, I don't know how much longer they're going to wait, but some are a little slower to the dinner table, right? It is what it is. But I had something else to ask and I kind of forgot already. Because I'm kind of intrigued. I'm trying to figure out how you guys are obviously doing more than just coming in, you're straight brokering, you're talking commissions, because when you're talking the product mix you have, you've got a whole set of different types of distributors, right? You got dry distributors that you may be helping people go to. You got fresh, frozen, refrigerated. Like that's a lot of different, there's all different businesses.
Very different dynamics, mechanics.
Everything's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, sure. Yeah, you really, I mean, every single brand has to have their own strategy and their own plan, and that's what we help them.
But you guys are assisting in that part of it too, then. So you're not really. I know you're a broker, but you're not really the broker. Still, you're still doing it. Sounds like probably a bit of brand management or extra coaching, not just worrying about which retailer we're going to get in tomorrow.
I'd say yeah, for sure. But I don't think we're alone in that. I think there's a couple of us out there, a couple of good brokers out there that are doing that kind of work, and they're the size they are for a reason.
Right.
When I put Indigo in that camp and Marsham in that camp.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's brokers that are just more, kind of tactical,
bread and butter,
transactional, and you give us commission, we'll go sell your product, and there's not.
And they do it. It's all good. It works for them. Sure.
Yeah. We've invested a ton of money in systems. We've got BI analytics systems that are giving us insight into things we never had before. I know you had Bram and Jeff Doucette on the show, because I love those guys. Like we're working closely with those guys. We've got
cool guys though, right?
They're cool.
What those guys are doing, like Bram, I can't even talk.
Bram
to
is.
No, I can't. I let Phil do the talking.
I love that guy. He's so smart. That guy.
He makes me feel stupid.
So like, I thank you.
Conversation short and get off.
Or just let him talk, because then you know what? Hopefully, some like by osmosis will just.
Something will sink in.
And then if I talk to my friends who have no clue, I actually sound pretty good. So it works.
Yeah, but what they're doing is great, and we've invested heavily with them for this retail visibility platform, which is changing the way we think about things. So there's we're always trying to, and that's always been kind of my interest. And the nice thing about running a company is you get to kind of pick and choose where you get involved and what kind of work you want to do. And that's always been what kind of lights me up is the tech stuff, the data, the insights, anything that's different. I'm always trying to create some sort of point of difference for our company, and we were the first broker to have, a team of analysts. Like, no, I mean, not the first, but the first natural broker.
Right.
And, that was unheard of back then, like, because there wasn't even that much data, but we found there was data. You just had to really look for it. And when you found it and had a way to deal with it, you could do some remarkable things. And now it's everybody's got, everybody needs an analyst. Everybody's got a BI platform of some kind. Everyone's got a CRM. So it's all catching up, but we've always been a little bit ahead of the curve on that. And this retail stuff we're doing, I think in 2 or 3 years, everybody will be doing that as well. Because I haven't shown one person that system that hasn't been just blown away.
Yeah.
Like, how is this possible? I'm like, well, it's here. It's now. It's
here.
Yeah,
it's happening.
It's not how, man. Just trust me. It's here. Don't worry about the hows right now. Just get on board and get giddy up.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Where do you see it going, Patrick? What are you thinking right now? We've had 18, 20 months of this shit. Doesn't sound like it's ending anytime soon. Like what happens to retail? What happens to our industry? Like what's sort of next?
I think I don't have a crystal ball. I'm still really bullish on the natural. I talk to so many young millennials that are into natural and organic food, and I get so hopeful for the future. That was, there was a time when I got into this industry where our demographic was tight. It was 35 to 49 female. Mm-hmm. Now it's younger and younger. It's crossing over genders. It's so I think the categories are going to keep exploding. I think the watch outs are going to be, like I said earlier about these brands, too many brands starting up, and numbers don't work. And one of the problems, even in Canada, you have is, and I'll try and pick on a new category now. I'll pick on the bar categories. I don't want to keep talking about pancakes and adaptogen beverages, but if you have someone launches a bar, you get 5 people that launch bars, and one of them, manages to get into the Loblaws bar set, and one of them manages to get into the Sobeys set, and one of them manages to get into the London Drugs and Save-On set, and one of them gets into Costco. They kind of are all working against each other. So they've all kind of taken up space in those various categories that is basically blocking out the others from getting in. But then they can't get into that one that they're in. So they've all these tiny brands where if there was, instead of 5 bars, 1 bar, and they could get into all 5 places, they might actually grow a business. So I get worried about that, and bars might not be a great example for that, but I do worry about that. I think there's only so many kombuchas that can be on the shelf.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking the same one.
Yeah, and it's at some point, they're just not going to be able to get the scale that they need to be viable. So I do worry about that, and we're pretty mindful of that in the partners that we choose, and certainly the investments that we make. So I think that's going to be that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. One other concern I have is this trend, and it was before COVID, so you can't even blame COVID. A lot of U.S. brands aren't even coming to Canada anymore, and that to me is a bit of a concern for my business and our industry. If you think of some, I could name $500 million brands in the U.S. Keto Super Coffee, Simple Mills, Spindrift, a bunch more that Oatly, that have not launched in Canada. Siete Snacks hasn't done a meaningful launch here. Like, these guys aren't interested in Canada, and I don't blame them in a way, because it's an expense. It's not a huge market for them when they still have a bunch of doors to get into the US, and it's an expensive market. So I get why they're not doing it, but it's a little bit concerning, and I think something's got to give on our side to get some of these brands up here, and I think it's got to start at retail.
Is that so?
I was going to ask you that too. I wonder if it's different things.
So I'll ask it, but I'm conscious that you work with retailers and things like that, but I guess I wonder if that is a retail environment versus a consumer, consideration, right? Because the dynamic between brands and retailers in the US is different, right? Like, they don't pay listing fees down there. Their pricing structure, their competitive structure is different, right? Like up here, like up here, if you can make it, you really can make it, right? Because you've conquered listing fees, you figured out how to, kind of follow the paperwork and sort out yourself with, say the top 3 to 5 grocers in the country, right? So if you can hang here, you can get to where you think these guys should be, $5 million, 500,000 in EBITDA. You really do. You have a great brand that's going to be solid, all the way through. But U.S. to Canada, it's funny because when I was at J&J, every new incoming Canadian president, every time they changed a VP of sales, because they do that rotation thing, every time a VP of sales would come in, you kind of brace for that first conversation around just listing fees alone. You're like, I know it's illegal in the US. I know you guys don't do that. But we do. Yeah, I know.
We shouldn't do it. I don't think we could. We don't do it in the States. We're not going to do it in Canada. Yeah. Okay.
And you kind of like,
good luck.
So is that kind of where these brands kind of go, wow, no? Or is it more, because like they're different kinds of alarm, right? One is if the consumer environment just isn't right for it,
that's different. That's
right? That's a really worrisome, but if the other one is about retailers,
I also think it might be regulatory, which I'm sure you can pick up on both.
Yeah.
English French is not a pleasant adventure
for an
American. There's so many headwinds for big US brands. First of all, the biggest one is they really don't need to be here, because a lot of them are private equity owned or heavily leveraged. So they really are trying to sell the company, and that's the goal. And whether and the mantra down there is just keep your head down and keep the doors going. Let's get to 100 million. That's the sweet spot, and then boom. and Canada's really not going to move the needle that much. In the old days, it used to move the needle a bit, and also acquirers would like to see that your brand works outside of the US. So checked a few boxes. Hey, this thing could go, global, but I think the headwinds are everything you just said. I mean, it's the regulatory, it's the labels, it's the inventory. But it's, to make it in Canada, you have to get, there's 3 retailers that you need to be in. Yeah. And all of the costs to get into those 3 retailers are up front, pretty much. And so before they've even had a chance to really test it, because you can't dabble in Canada. If you're a big US brand, you can't come in here and just, do the natural channel for a while. It doesn't work, you've got to go big. Like, Oatly will only launch in Canada when Loblaws is ready.
It's got to be a Loblaws. If Loblaws is not going to take it, what are you doing?
Yeah, what do you?
You're kidding yourself. Bother? Or you have to then line up your retails. You got to get Save-On in the West, maybe Metro or so. Like, you got to say, okay, how do I make a Loblaws out of 3 guys?
Yeah.
But
the challenge with that is the category review dates never line up. I wish they did, because we have that challenge all the time. But Save-On's here, Metro's here.
Yeah.
You can't line them up to to even take a full run of products. So I think there's enough challenges. I think that there's like every challenge, there's an opportunity in that software, and I think I think there'll be somebody or companies that take that risk on, and we've seen in the past there's plenty of people that have the rights for Canada and do a buy-sell arrangement and run Canadian business for X brand in the US. So I think we might see more of that, where it's lower risk for those guys and they can just literally sell it off to somebody up there. So we'll see, but that's a little bit concerning. So that means we're going to be counting on these Canadian brands to keep these categories growing and interesting. So
to your point, then we got the Canadian brands. I need to understand how to do this business, and the first thing out of the gate is not to run to the States when you haven't even opened a Nature's Emporium, never mind a Loblaws. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to take things in stride, right?
Yeah. Or you can do good business. Raising institutional money too early is a killer for these guys, because there's expectations that come along with that you are going to do all of those things that you really shouldn't be doing,
Yeah. Yeah. And entrepreneurs are like, it's great promises. Yeah. And then, when shit hits, when the paper hits the pen hits the paper, are they ready? Are they doing it? They're typically scattered and they're running.
Right.
You can't have that. But most entrepreneurs aren't business people at the beginning. They're idea people. They've got cool shit going on. They've got some nuts to try something. They're not.
We admire their energy.
Right. It's awesome. But at times you want to reel them back in and say, okay, breathe.
Yeah.
Right. Just breathe for a minute. Like, just think this through.
Yeah. Right? I mean, listen, through all the clutter, there's still some great ideas happening.
There's tons.
For sure. I know you had the midday.
Well, those guys are just a hoot. I mean, like, honestly, I don't know how much I have to take. We tell Jake, I can only do certain, like, even following him. I can follow for 3 days and I got to rest. He exhausts me. Yeah. I got to take a break because you're killing me.
You know what? It's so funny though. He'll kill me for saying this, but he came over. He slept in my house a couple of weeks ago. He was actually really quiet. Like, it was, I geared up for this big night. I figured it's gonna go wild.
He's asleep.
Actually, really, really quiet. Like, just an awesome guy to hang out with.
He's you know what? He's a really nice young man. Like, I really like him. And then we had a chance to talk to Nick on, when was that? This week, Sunday morning.
It was last week, Sunday.
Right? Like another one. Like, their story's cool. They're just nice people too, right? And that's who you root for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want them to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, quality people and doing everything right, but at the core of it is an amazing product.
Absolutely.
Without
it, it's whatever.
Yeah. I feel the same way about Gus Klimos at Unbun. At the root, I mean, he's a hardworking guy. He's doing everything right, but at the root of it all is this amazing product that's fills a need and tastes good and is killing it.
See, that's the stuff you need, though, right? And that's the stuff you got. That's the guys you want to help and the ones you want to see go.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? You should get him on. If you haven't had Gus Klimos on,
I'll
make that. We have not.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to love it.
We would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got
love the stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, it's all about the stories. Yeah. That was cool, man.
Sure. So, thank you for coming on.
It's nice catching up with you. It's been a long time.
It was really great. Like, we really love this. We would love it if you came back. So if you as you see the market change, you see things happening.
Maybe even in the new year, get out of this Christmas season. Give us an idea what you thought, what you're seeing. Tell us where you're at. You might be at 400 brands by then at the rate you're moving.
Oh my gosh.
So, I don't know where the hell you're going to be.
Like 40 in 4 months, right?
I would have lost the bet. So, I mean, I'm no good at this game. So forget that one.
Yeah. I'd love to come back and get an update on us. And certainly, as we get out of COVID, I think it's going to be interesting to see how things change. So, I would love to do that, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
No, our pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for saying yes. Honestly, it was good. It was fun.
It was really great.
Nice seeing you.
Yeah, you too. Good to see you, Kenny.
Okay, my friend.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Patrick.
Chat soon. Take care, buddy.
Okay.
Ciao.
Take care.
Phil, you sticking on for a minute?
Yeah.
Mark gave us shit. Yeah, he's real. Mark gave us shit because apparently, if you listen to our podcast with Nick, hey, do you want to know who the investor is? Yeah. Okay. Click. The podcast
I did.
Dead.
Yeah, I did. I think I don't even think I edited it.
No, he basically said we didn't even say goodbye. Like, and that was like, there we go.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I think, I think that's true.
No, Patrick's pretty cool. He's been around a long time, right? Like he knows his shit. It's funny. It's the same thing though, right? When he like Higgins Cohen. Like I want to get into the story. We ended up in an argument one time because I hated the way he was managing one of his brands he'll probably remember we met in the pizzeria up the street from me here in East Van. And I told him, I said, how many fucking people can I buy the same bar from at different costs? You're the master distributor in the country. So we got into like a kerfuffle, but I liked Patrick and I liked what he did. So it never tarnished it, but I was like, fuck. And then, you know what, I think for him, I think probably in a lot of ways, the sell to an Acosta was probably great because you hear what he says, systems, process, all the boring shit that nobody wants to talk about.
That'll hurt you in the long run.
Exactly. You cannot grow haphazard. You can get to a number, but you're gonna hit the glass ceiling before, or you're gonna hit the ceiling. Yeah. It's not gonna be glass. It's a concrete floor. You're not gonna go. That's it. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true. It's true.
Until you do that.
Yeah.
But it's cool. He's got a lot of cool shit going on. That's a lot of brands. Since May?
40. Holy crap.
Come on, man. 40. That's a lot of shit.
That guy, he's driven, man. From a guy who wanted to just make 30 grand-ish.
Yeah, not bad.
A year, right? Like not bad at all.
No, good on him, man. Takes a lot of work, but good on him.
Yeah.
Very cool.
To our listeners, we probably should apologize because I should apologize. I definitely
Phil made wrong. Phil made wrong.
I definitely didn't. I probably should have done something with the ending there. So I apologize if you heard that.
It's all good. You know what?
Did not mean to hang up on you. So
you know what's kind of funny though? At least we know that at least one person listens to the end. Huh? See? It's a good little test.
Well, I listen, boss. I'm just gonna say.
Well, I don't know if the boss.
I know you were listening.
End. Did she?
No. I'm not doubting the boss. So if you're gonna fire somebody, if head count's an issue, you heard who backed you and who. Well,
didn't. I'm not. I just want to know if she got to the end.
I'm just saying.
I thought she would have critiqued it by now.
Politeness that you didn't call us out. I'm just saying, in case you decided not to call us out, I appreciate it. Just remember that Kenny doubted you. That's all.
I'm just going to say it this way. She's called us out for a lot less. So I am starting to wonder if she listens to the end. That's all I'm going to say. I get fired. That's fine. I can almost do a podcast. I know how to use Zoom now. I can't record the fucking thing, but I can use Zoom. And there's a record button on Zoom. I could do that.
So like for guests who are still with us, we actually have, let me see if I can find it, but we have like, we are loaded with guests. Like we have a lot
of guests coming up. Yeah. A lot of really good guests, a lot of interesting people.
Yeah. We're booked. We're booked into, oh my God, it's so hard to open, but I think we're booked almost to the end of October now.
It's awesome. And there's a lot of cool. There's some larger players in there. There's some smaller. So that should be good. I mean, hopefully we'll all learn something.
You know what? We have one that Kenny and I met through Clearco that actually knows Yulia from Intellicate, who's also been on the show. And we didn't know that, like it was kind of a funny roundabout way that we found
What came out after? I think it was something on your, it was maybe your email said it or something where she picked in, or she was having, she was meeting with
No, so how I found out is we were on a Clearco panel, and she was telling us about the product, and I sent her website to Yulia because Yulia started biking.
Okay.
And then Yulia was like, "Oh yeah, I just met her. We're going biking on Friday," right? So it was
that's
like
hilarious.
Oh my God, this is so weird, right? Like, yeah. So she's actually end of October.
I'm looking forward to that too.
Some really cool.
Yeah.
We've got some, and then so if you're wondering, like we've got some folks that have the next one up tomorrow that we're going to record a little early. Is a guy who retired running a great big brand, right? And then we've got someone who was a
tomorrow?
CEO. What's that?
We have a podcast tomorrow?
We do.
I have it on my schedule.
We do.
I'm dead serious.
We really do.
Do we?
Tomorrow morning.
Holy shit, there it is. Oh, he's not retired.
I thought he's retired already.
No, he doesn't
Are
work
you just
very
making
much.
fun of him?
No, he doesn't work very
I
much,
see,
maybe, but I don't think he's retired.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, so
that's
he's
funny.
coming on,
geez, okay.
and then somebody who reinvented themselves at 50-ish, who went from like a really big job
leagues.
in a really big company, and then he's gone on to do big things anyway. So that's kind of cool. We've got then a small maker who's done a really good job as well, and then we've got some HR folks who will talk to us after that. Like we've just got some really cool.
It's good, exciting,
cool brands coming up. Yeah, some great people.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, dude. Look at us.
Look at us go. Look at the
kind of organized.
We're booked. I mean, organized. Well, at least we're booked. That's half the battle.
Well, no, kind of organized. I think that's what that means. Yeah.
Okay, boy.
All right, man.
Okay, I got nothing else for you.
Okay.
What time is it? Oh, it's 10 o'clock your time. Time for you to go to bed.
No,
I'm gonna go watch TV.
That's too early. Yeah.
Was I supposed to send you something? Now that we're talking, like, do I have to work something for work to send you?
I'm going to pause this now. So,
good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.